Welcome to Recovery Reach by Recovery.com, where we talk with marketing and business experts in the substance use and mental health treatment industry to help grow your organization's impact. Because the more people you reach, the more people you can help. Gary Garth, founder of Elevate.io, joins us to unpack why most behavioral health marketing misses the mark and how to fix it. From lead gen pitfalls to admissions alignment, this one's packed. Let's dive in. All right. We're in the studio today with Gary Garth from Elevate. Gary, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. You have a interesting background. You've kind of taken some amazing entrepreneurial twists and turns. Just in 60 seconds or so, could you tell our listeners and who are you and how you went from entrepreneuring to getting laser focused and running a digital marketing agency for behavioral health?
Absolutely. The course is in no way linear, and there's a lot of deviations, but it all started, I'm originally from Denmark, Europe, in case you couldn't tell from the accent. Moved abroad, stateside about 15 years ago. Always been in sales and marketing, from starting one of the largest radio networks in Europe, Radio Energy, and managing broadcasting there. Kind of went into digital and spent almost 12 years working in close partnerships with Google, Microsoft, and just basically helping people generate leads online. I did that for many years with the company, and then it was highly successful, like Inc. 5000 fastest growing company of the year 4 years in a row, and all these awards, and hundreds of employees and thousands of clients. And then one day I just woke up and everything looked different. Unfortunately, my best friend simultaneously had just died from an overdoses. And I had been experiencing challenges myself. I saw everybody who was successful within my network. There was a tendency with a lot of success, a lot of stress, a lot of requirements typically would lead to, some destructive patterns. So I started to look into that and just found the statistics shocking. And I don't know if it was my age. I was just hitting 40 years old. At that point, I was just like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I'm not happy with all this money in the bank account. So I sold that company and checked out. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work in recovery and help people out of suffering, so my next friends or people I know wouldn't have to experience that.
Did you see a gap within behavioral health that you thought, hey, there's an opportunity for me to help in this particular way?
Yes. I mean, a tremendous gap. And that's, I think, why I'm so passionate about Elevate and everything we're doing. I mean, I think everybody knows the statistics about 24, 25 million people in need of recovery, and less than 10% actually goes into recovery. I wanted to start my own facilities back then, and actually invested into 2 overseas luxury boutique facilities, Dominican and Canada, and was kind of going to be the CMO. That's my strength. And unfortunately, the time was just horrible. It was right before COVID, so there's travel restrictions. I probably lost a couple of $1 million in just keeping these things, the lights on, but it gave me an opportunity to really research and how would we acquire patients? What's the market? What does the market look like? What does the competition do? And I was just blown away because I was interviewing other marketing agencies or growth accelerators who would help us. I couldn't manage all the marketing issues myself as the CMO. And I just found out that, there's so many facilities that are not full census. They have great clinicians, they have great medical staff, they're doing it out of passion, purpose, but they just maybe don't have a good go-to-market strategy or a good admissions team. That part of the operational excellence is not in place. And as I started to interview companies myself, I found out maybe there wasn't as many good players as I was expecting in this landscape to help these facilities get to full census. So I kind of pivoted from wait a minute, I should leverage the 25 years of experience I have with Google, Microsoft, and these thousands of companies and take that and just package it up for behavioral health and instead help other facilities get to full census. That way I'm making an impact indirectly. And we started that 2 years ago, and it's going very good. We have about 40 clients now of all shapes and sizes, everything from mental health to 6-bed facilities, substance abuse. It really varies. And across the board, we are getting the results, and several are expanding, opening. So for me, I I love it now because it's going good. We're creating jobs. We're making money. Of course, you have to make money, but more importantly, like I think like you guys have an admissions track on the wall. So every time we're measuring the VOBs, the leads, everything, every time there's an admit, so we're like, these are the people that are going into recovery because of us. They probably wouldn't have gone into otherwise. So for me, it's really a rewarding feeling. And I'm very happy I made that decision 2 years ago, or 3 years ago.
Love that. I mean, what a journey and what a mission. And we're so happy to have you in the industry for the good work you're doing on behalf of your clients. So we're here today to talk about kind of two big things, but I'm sure we're going to have a pretty wandering conversation about a lot because you're so knowledgeable. Wanted to start it off talking about lead generation versus demand generation when it comes to patient acquisition strategy and tactics. Before we split hairs, how do you define these things, lead generation and demand generation, and what makes them different?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andrew. Very rarely do I hear that question, and very rarely do I hear people bring up what is the difference between one another, right? And I think you have to have been in certain industries in order to fully understand the difference, where maybe it's more competitive and where you're going to have to deploy all strategies available in order to accomplish your business goals. So for me, the main difference is many in our industry are very dependent on lead generation. Now, we get leads every day because of my past. They call and say, hey, Gary, you worked so many years with Google, Microsoft. Can you run our PPC campaigns, right? It's come almost like a default. And while we do that and do that very effectively, that is very much lead generation. That is the bottom of the funnel, and that is just capturing most folks at a high cost when they're about ready to enter their recovery journey. And of course, there's other similar channels, but it's very saturated, it's very competitive, and I would say for most brands, it's even not profitable unless you have all the other ingredients in place in order to turn very expensive lead into an admission. But demand gen, as I see, is more about you going in, establishing a brand, going in with non-intrusive selling points, thinking long-term, thinking multi-touch point for them to become a patient. And that could be, everything from having a holistic strategy where you deploy strategic partnerships, you have a very good alumni program that works good in the branding sense, you have a very strong social media presence. So when you're deploying content on your podcast, if you're deploying your thought leadership content in your SEO content strategy, you're packaging that up as well and you're putting that as reels on your social media. Combine all those different efforts with your conference attendance, your strategic partnerships, a good PR release. Now you are in the market across many channels, and it's not the exact same in our industry, but for instance, if you compare it with B2B, there's common, you have to have 32, 34 touch points before somebody becomes a client. In our industry, what I've seen looking at our 40 clients and the thousands of admissions there is that typically 30, 40, 50% of folks admit within 1 week, right? But the rest becomes pipeline because they are not in a place where they either financially or from a mindset standpoint are ready to take that commitment and go into recovery. Like they're still holding on to that last straw of not really ready to make that change in their life. So staying on top of them, not just with conventional pipeline, hey, are you ready? Hey, are you ready? Hey, are you ready? Maybe send you a million texts, but simply influencing them with different content. Here's inspiring stories of other people that came out of recovery. Here's some actual science to back up this modality and how we do it. And here's what we'd expect afterwards. You're going to those kind of touch points at the end of the day, I find is less intrusive, less aggressive, and actually brings people in a better mindset for long-term recovery. Very few facilities do that, but that's something I think brand building nowadays is more important than ever, and especially a demand gen strategy is the winners of this industry is the ones who fully embrace that.
Yeah. So kind of to simplify, lead gen is using marketing tactics at the very bottom of the funnel when someone is trying to knock on the door of a facility. Your PPC campaigns, they're searching, rehabilitation near me, substance use disorder treatment facility near me, and you're hitting it with an ad, and boom, they don't know who the heck you are. You just showed up first on Google.
Yeah.
And demand gen is attempting to influence them before they make that search. So instead of just searching what's the closest facility near me, they might search your facility specifically. or they may see a piece of content from you because they're a couple months away from saying, I need to go in. And now they're filling out information for you to send them more info about testimonials and education materials. And now they're kind of in your ecosystem, which means when they search, they're not going to click an ad. They're going to click your organic result, perhaps, or reach out to you in a way that you're not paying them to, right?
Yes. And there's so many different tactics. So that is almost like in the old days, I think you called it guerrilla marketing. It's really like, how do we get in front of consumers in a more effective way, more organically, and not just, keep paying all these high invoices to media companies for ad placements. So if thought out, if consistent, and you start refurbishing content across all these, it can be really effective.
When you have maybe a new client, or you're just looking out there and seeing what's going on in the world of behavioral health marketing, what are some like telltale signs that someone is over-invested in lead generation?
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to spot, right? Because somebody submits a strategy session on a website, they fill out a form and want to talk. We have a whole pre-call preparation process, and that's going like, okay, we're conducting search terms. We're looking how the local strategy is, the GBP profile, the directories. We go into tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs to kind of see what is the organic visibility. And it's very clear. Like most folks, I can say, okay, if they have a website, it's not ranking well, they don't have consistency across all directories. I'm talking all health directories like Psychology Today to Recover.com and everything that's related. So they have a good digital footprint. The authority score is very low on the website. The content is typically, they hired some agency that does AI generated content, a big no-go. Never, ever, ever do that, right? You're going to essentially be looked at as, it's going to be categorized as plagiarism, and you're not going to speak with out of authority, which is what Google wants. So you combine all those different factors. They perhaps don't have a good social media presence. Then I say, okay, they're not leveraging that. They're probably paying some agency $100,000, and they're going up and down, and the mood is going up and down because of the Googleflation and the constant increase. So what we like to do in those kind of cases is like, okay, we can help you here. Like, we're not going to just rip off the Band-Aid and say, let's lower your budget to 20,000. Let's maybe lower it to 80,000. Let's try to see if we can get you the same or better results with that 80,000. But let's try to invest into these other channels, because not only will they drive admits, but they also influence the decision-making process throughout the admission, is what I've come to learn. Because people do go to several sites. People do go to the directories. They do go to social media to get the credibility. Like, was this where I want to go into recovery? What does the bets look like? What do other people say? Like, what is this place I'm going to spend 30 days with? Do they understand me is the biggest thing, right? Will they understand me? I'm unique. I'm different. I'm not like anybody else who's going into recovery. That's what most people think. And that's the kind of like what you want to portray. And that leads me to my second point, is also many facilities is trying to be everything for everybody. And I think the winners nowadays are the ones who understand to, dive into a specific target audience, and they specialize in a certain group, so they resonate better, the messaging becomes better, and they overall get a better experience. And essentially the cost per admission goes down, but also, patient satisfaction.
Yeah. You mentioned a bunch of stuff there. I want to dive back into. First being this amazing word, Googleflation. Can you explain what that is and what it means when it's rearing its ugly head?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I mean, I love Google. I was a Google SMB Premier Partner for 10 years. The head of a sales enablement, and then wrote the foreword for my book. So I'm not going to say anything bad about them. They're still a big part of us. But the fact of the matter is that just every quarter, the prices go up double digit for CPCs in this industry, right? Every single effing quarter. Now, then you factor that into challenges with, insurance reimbursement rates and other industry challenges that facilities may face, staffing issues and rising cost. Then it's a very lethal strategy to put all your eggs into that basket. Now, it's still one of the most effective that you can turn it on and it works right out of the gate, but you don't want to put, the full faith on Google, because competition can enter tomorrow in a given market. You could see it dialed in, and then all of a sudden that's going to make an influx on the CPCs, and they're bidding more aggressively because you go in and you're taking their lunch. Now they're struggling, they're scrambling to get those extra admins they didn't get before. So having a diversified approach and not putting everything into Google, I think is very important more than ever. The CPCs that we see as select keywords can go upwards $400-500 sometimes. It just blows my mind. I'm like, how does that even mathematically, unless you have like some insane conversion rates, that does not make sense. We always opt out of those bits because that's putting yourself and the admissions team on a very hard spot. Like somebody clicked on the ad and was like, you better goddamn ring the phone.
Yeah, and we're going to get into, metrics that you should all be following closely in the second half of this. So much more to come there. The other thing that you had mentioned was, lead gen is really like, it's not just PPC, but a lot of folks, you're diagnosing that they're only focused on PPC. They don't have a strong website. They don't have strong content. They don't have a strong physical presence in their community. They don't have a strong presence on social media.
Yes.
And you said that becomes a problem with today's consumer because they're going to research you in multiple arenas. So you need to be present in all of these other areas. It is not enough just to say, here's an ad, the top of Google. I'm paying out the wazoo for it, and you'll have to come to our place. So you would suggest more that you need a mixture of these various areas, which kind of gets me to this next point. You have this amazing visual on the Elevate website.
Yeah.
And it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but you call it Maslow's hierarchy of admissions. Can you talk about that? Because that really gets us into this idea that it's a multi-touch journey, and you need to be present in a lot of different areas. And how do you prioritize those different areas? There's a lot to go in there. How would you approach that? Explain.
Absolutely. Thank you for noticing that. And that was me out of inspiration 2 years into the project with all these clients and prospects and looking at data. I feel like I've been in the kitchen every day, all the time. I was like, okay, wait a minute, I'm starting to see some patterns here. And also speaking with executives for large and small facilities, it was like, they really want to have a healthy census and it's consistent. They're not too impacted by the seasonality and the influxes in market. Those are the ones where they have the basics of the pyramid, the Maslow pyramid in place. And, starting at the very bottom is your alumni program, right? Really, I mean, that is the best advocates for bringing in new patients, people who can, preach how you've helped them, and they can, tell the stories of hope and recovery and how you got there. That community really engaged with for instance, we take the Goals Grade and Greatness Planner, we put our company's logo, I send them like typically 250, 500 copies, and then I work with the admissions team and how they can hand it out at the end of the decision, get them into the links to the alumni group, they scan it there, and it's basically staying connected with that group because they will refer in business, and God forbid they have to get readmitted, you still have a good contact so it doesn't go off the track. Then the next level, I would say, so that's just like fully leveraging that and the word of mouth effect, essentially, you could call it. Business development is a huge opportunity as well, because I'm not just talking about your reciprocal partnerships. That when I got very surprised about this industry, it's like business development reps and they're basically just all talking with each other. It's like, what the heck's going on here? That is an important ingredient in the big picture, but also non-reciprocal partnerships, working with employee-assisted programs, working with large organizations, working with psychologists, the local drug counselor, working with the courthouse, all these other ways where it's like, I call it the long tail, but it's getting there, making sure your brochures, your material are out there, having a strong community outreach program. So when you have a lot of advocates, referrals that can send you patients, that is a very low cost of admission, and it's a recommendation. They come in a good place, and that's a fantastic scenario. All of those two things has to be backed up with a local SEO strategy. Must have. Local SEO nowadays is all about distance, relevance, and prominence. You have to be within 40 miles. That's where you really got to own it, right? Own it in every single. You got to be in all the directories. We have about 200 you should be on. Some of the major ones, the other ones are more for having consistency in the name, address, phone number. And then basically having a review generation program, very important, because how do you influence that is that you want to fuel it with 5-star reviews. If you have bad reviews, you want to be on top of it with review management right away. It's such an important ingredient in the algorithm. If you get those core components done very well, along with regular SEO, then you should be having anywhere between 30 to 60% of your census full because of those efforts. Now, that is huge, because now when you start talking about my paid media strategy, then you can go into the Google or the Microsoft or the recover.com. And anybody who's ever been on the site, you'll see the 3 layers of the pyramid at the top. At the most expensive, at the very top, you have the Google ads with the highest CPA. Below that is Microsoft ads. I'm a big fan of Microsoft ads. My company was Microsoft Ads Partner of the Year in 2020, so I basically know that inside out. And then right below that, as the preferred media, I have recover.com. And it's not, I didn't put that in there out of like, I don't even think we had a partnership or we had started working together. I just started seeing like, wait a minute, because we have like multi-channel dashboards that we show clients with the same funnel that we built. So like if you're an executive and you're running ads, then you can click on Google and say, what's my cost per VOB, cost per qualified VOB, and admit here. Let me click over to recovery. How does it compare? Let me click over to Microsoft. It's black and white, and look at it at any date range. And I started to see that many facilities just had incredibly low CPA on recover.com. And that's why I squeezed it in as one of the preferred media preferences. So in summary, if you take the foundation, right, the required, the BD, alumni, the local SEO, you get that right, 30, 60%. Then you put ads to add to that, and then you start allocating budget on the most effective channels. And that will give you a way more predictability, consistency in census, and also more profitable at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and it's a really informative visual. So I encourage folks to go check that out. We can put a link to it as well in our show notes. But just to reemphasize, at the base of that, alumni, BD, local SEO, review generations, we're not even getting to paid media yet. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, a trap for folks when they're starting out, because it's hard to set up some of those things. So they'll go with the Google ads right away. It's like the easiest thing to do. It's to spin it up, throw some thousands of dollars into it, and you start to see, at least clicks, and you're like, great.
Calls. Yeah.
It's like you get stuck there because, maybe someone else is managing your budget and they're just seeing the dollars and this is working. I'm not going to take a chance on any of these other things. So it's a tough spot to be when you are, really dependent on Google ads. It's hard to get off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So let's not say that lead gen is completely dead.
Lead gen is not dead. It should just be optimized. And on that note, I work a lot because we manage several $1 million in media spending on Google still, and Microsoft for that matter, and also via our partnership. I think the shift is just understanding now that Google and all these platforms are taking away control. Like when I used to start in Google 15 years ago, there was broad match keywords and the exact match, phrase match, and all these different targeting settings. You were in full control. Now, when you type in an exact match keywords, meaning I'm only bidding for this exact phrase, Google still shows you synonyms and variations. They want to take control. Give me your credit card and sit back. They've been trying to do that for many years. They launched PMax and all these different initiatives. So what I tell advertisers, what we do here is that we're very adamant about tracking attribution. So we start collecting and say what is the most important conversion actions? At least let's measure every VOB. Let's make sure we understand the ratio between VOB and qualified viable VOBs, and essentially also your CPA. We may not be able to influence your CPA because you may have an admissions process problem. You may not have the right tech. You're not hitting the industry benchmarks, which is a whole different topic. But from a lead gen standpoint, at least I can control these because I can build the landing page, I can create the right campaigns and select the right keywords. But after a while, you're just doing what any good savvy marketer would do. And that's where I think you start collecting conversion data, VOB conversion data, and we start importing that back into the platforms. That basically tells Google, Microsoft, here is our ideal patient profile. Can you get me more of those? And let's face it, they know everything about us behind the scenes, right? They know which insurances we have. There's cookies, and even though there's privacy laws, so it's proven to be very effective the more data you pass back. And I see many advertisers who simply just like, they're letting it run without having that feedback loop. So I say that is a requirement for us because I see it works. I've seen it in big accounts where it just like makes huge impact, the more data, but even the smaller advertisers. And then the biggest thing here, Andrew, I would say is that now you're establishing the foundation so that when these large language model platforms, the ChatGPT, the Perplexity, are rolling out ads, and they are, and it's only a matter of time because I know the head of partnerships at both companies, and then you are ready to upload data there and leverage that upcoming network. So I say, if you're not doing that, get started yesterday, because otherwise you're going to not get on the bus on the next train. Plus, you're probably not having a profitable campaign right now, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Let's kind of segue into the data aspect of this. I've seen, the dashboards that you create or screenshots of the dashboards that you create for your clients. One thing about them is they are very, I don't want to say minimal, but they're easy to read. Like they have the most important data in a very, prominent spot on that dashboard. So you've also written about this, what is it, the 25 sales metrics that every organization should start tracking. But 25 is a lot, maybe too much for this podcast. What would you say, put a fine point on it? What are some of the most important metrics that you need to be tracking today, just for the health of your marketing campaign?
Absolutely. With the dashboards, basically, I just found myself that I hate to sit and look at a ton of data. It's like, what is the most important data we need to focus on? And if you are a non-marketing savvy facility executive, then why would you need to know about click-through rate and your share of voice and everything else? It's good, maybe in a quarterly report or whatever. But at the end of the day, you got certain drivers that's going to impact your P&L and determine whether you can expand your facility. So for me, the most important is leads, but not necessarily just lead. It's about lead quantity versus lead quality, which in return turns into BOB, viable or qualified BOBs, and admits. And then understanding the cost per BOB, cost per viable BOB, and cost per admit. Those are the three metrics that we live by. That's why our dashboards represent that right out of the gate. Then we can go into everything else afterwards. Because if you start getting those right, then you're going to be able to have a more predictable patient acquisition strategy, and you can start comparing channels with one another. Essentially, it requires a uniformed lead rating system that you implement with your company. You should have the right call tracking software. You need ideally the right CRM so you can keep it consistent and at ease for your admissions reps. But if you get that, then you can start going into all the other equally important metrics in terms of time to admit, average length of stay, lifetime value per patient, all those additional questions, which is like if you ever worked at B2B, it's CAC versus LTV ratio. That's the mother of all metrics. So how much can I spend to acquire a patient, understanding that they will be several steps down in the recovery process. They're going to refer at X percentage rate. Now, if we wanted to grow at the highest level possible with profitability, I know the number. I know the data in exact terms. That is not something most of our facilities I work with know. It's something they get to with the CRM and over time. So for starters, just those three metrics will go a long way.
And let's put a fine point on it. Those three metrics were, same again for us.
BOB, cost per BOB, cost per qualified or viable BOB, some people call it, and your cost per admit.
I think this is really important, especially for up and coming marketers who are reporting up to a CMO, or maybe they're just reporting into the executive suite, CEOs, the COOs, presidents, founders, is the numbers that those folks want to know. Like you said,
it's all that matters.
It's the clicks, it's not the impressions, it's how did this impact my bottom line?
Yeah.
So I think it's a really strong message. I also like, Gary, how we're talking about, there's 25 of these metrics that you talk about, but really you should focus on a couple of them, right? This crawl, walk, run, which you take your clients through. So if we're crawling, I imagine you would say prioritize, cost per VOB, cost per qualified VOB, and then cost per admin as your starting three, yeah?
Yeah. Cost per lead, kind of have to throw that into the equation just to understand the ratio of leads turning into VOBs. But yes, those 4 metrics for starters will go a long way. And now you'll start to understand the effectiveness of your marketing investments. You can start to quantify, and this is partially why I went into this. It took a shift on my purpose and started Elevate, because I was interviewing agencies to do the SEO work for my facility when I wanted to take that route. And I'm not going to name names, but it was almost like an SEO snake oil salesman. And they were like, no commitments. We can't do anything. You have to wait 12 months. And I was like, if you know me, and you do, then there should be benchmarks for the industry. How much can I expect to grow given the different ingredients of my site? Like given this current state, do an audit. And then from that on, what would be a projected lead volume? And from that lead volume, how many of those would essentially turn into VOBs? I understand they're not all viable for me, but you must have some benchmarks and projections you could provide. And it was like everybody didn't have that. And it's like, it's so unpredictable, and it's Google, and it's up and down, and it's raining tomorrow. It's like, everything can be predicted and projected. So I think that gives you a good basis to say, start measuring it. Things come up. And then again, like we say, I'm publisher agnostic, so I don't care where you spend your money with us. If we can get you the full census by just working your BD program, let's do it. So essentially allocate the resources where it gives you the biggest bang for the buck. Understand that there's something called multi-channel attribution. You can't just cut everything because one thing is working, others does influence, but you can actually measure that too if you have a savvy setup where you measure sessions, etc. But start with those 3, and I promise a lot of questions is going to come up, right? Because you may have a perception that it's going good or it's not going good, because marketers are good. I mean, my former agency, just for context, I sold white label services. So I sold services to marketing agencies. So I know exactly, I know the numbers, the profit margins, the churn rates, I knew the process. So when I started Elevate, I'm going to start it entirely different because I know what everybody else is doing. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to not be so focused on the short-term profit and margin. Let me do something I know they're not doing. And most agencies don't want to report on this, right? They don't want to set a goal. Like even my employees, like Gary bringing on board, it's impossible to set a goal. I say, you put a goal, always, right? And at least now we have benchmark. We have to be able to break down the math. Let's put some thought into, like, we have actually done an analysis on how we think we can get to this based on different variations. Now we can explain with rationale the path to success. Now we're going to hit it. If it's a new site and it's very difficult, we don't know, but we at least have something we're shooting for. And most agencies, they don't want that. They're afraid of the commitment, the accountability. They think they'll get a cancellation. But for me, I can tell you, on our end, in my last agency, we had always talking about cancellations, churn rate. Here, we haven't had a cancellation the whole year. And I attribute that to us being very upfront, setting the right expectations, and then measuring things out of the gate. And the clients we have, I'm also very selective with it, because we have, for example, I don't know if you see it on the website, we have an ROI calculator that we're actually just revamping it. But I always take prospects and clients through that. But say, okay, where are you now? How many leads are you generating? Out of those leads, how many turn into VOB? Let's adjust the numbers. How many turn into that? How many bets do you have? So, okay, this is the current state, and here's the industry averages. Let's see, does this make sense? Because if they come back and say, no, I got to get to a $5,000 apartment, it's like, I don't know, you're living on a fantasy planet, and I can't do it for you, at least then. And whoever's telling you that, I think you got to question the intentions, whether it's long-term or short-term. And the ones who look at it with that long-term view and say, okay, I would like to get to this, but understand this is the reality, and how do we get there? Can we do that? That's the right fit, because it's not easy. We got a new website, landing pages, copy, we might change images. There's a lot of things that has to go into it, but is it worthwhile? Heck yeah, because that's the only way we change lives and get facilities to full census.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I keep on plugging your website and the tools that are on it, but you do have that ROI calculator, which is fascinating. And you've done a lot of research into just benchmarking different marketing costs across the industry, which I found super fascinating. And sometimes you're even breaking it down by state. So again, we'll have links in the notes here. I encourage everyone to go check that out just to see where you land.
Yeah.
And let Gary know if you're happy or disappointed when you see that. So, Gary, you've written a book about sales and kind of the synergies between marketing and sales. context of behavioral health,
Yes.
that's the handoffs between BD marketing and the admissions team, and how to get those folks working better so that they can each get better. Just wanted to start kind of picking your brain, because that is part of your offering at the agency.
Yeah.
So what are kind of the main issues that you typically can diagnose pretty early on, the breakdowns between marketing and admissions, and kind of what's at stake when that relationship isn't very strong?
Yeah. A good point. This is my favorite topic, because I think it doesn't only matter about, it's not only in our industry, but every industry. You get that right, you are ahead of the game. When I'm speaking with behavioral health facilities and, we are exploring whether we're a good fit to work together, I'm asking about the current data, the current strategy, the setup, but then I'm also asking about the collaboration with the admissions team for marketing. So first and foremost, how are they operating? Which phone system, which call tracking software do they have in place? Do they have any lead scoring that is already established? And how are they doing it? How diligently are they doing it? Subsequently, how are they managing that pipeline? Which kind of CRM are they using to, follow up on everybody who's not ready to admit because of the circumstances in life? How are they making sure that in order for marketing to get the best ROI, are following up with them in the right way, moving forward with the right systems and lead nurturing or newsletter campaigns, all these different vehicles to get them engaged. Then I'm looking at the reporting, communication, along with the, I won't call it sales collateral, but the supportive collateral that can be leveraged throughout their journey, so that when admissions teams are following up on marketing leads that are generated, like I always say, like, hit people up with value every time you contact them, instead of just asking for a sale. That goes along, that applies to any industry. So for instance, we work with a facility and they're doing podcasts. We book them on podcasts. And basically I'm coaching the owner of the facility to say, like, listen, this is your scene. You're going to talk 60 minutes. We're going to get some backlink juice for your SEO. We're going to put it on social media. You're going to use it as credibility. But remember, this is also your opportunity to say 2-3 golden nuggets about your program, or highlight a specific scenario of how you're unique and how you help people. So sometimes they just spit out something gold and they say, like, we had this scenario. Many people come to us, they think they're all worried about this, and that's normal. Then they come here, we take care of that. And here's the 3 specific things that I recommend. And then all of a sudden the admissions team starts sending out those little reels and say, hey, check this out, by the way, this is a founder, this is his methodology, this is a notion, this is our vision. And then people start building a relationship, right? They feel they already know the facility. Nobody does that, by the way, before they work with us. But if they had done it to that extent, now that's a strong collaboration. So I look for those kind of things. I don't require any of it, because I've just seen that it's so uncommon. But for starters, if they just have a good feedback system in terms of rating leads, that's a good starting point. Then we can come in with our framework to say, okay, let's follow this process. Let's make sure it applies to all channels. Let's set up a weekly meeting. I think the weekly communication, putting a face, right? It's not, you don't have sales and marketing over here and your leads is shit and you can't close shit. That's what other industries say, right? Okay, we're in this together. We're here to help each other. Can we collaborate? Can you expand a little bit on that? Oh, you got an admission. Way to go, my friend. Why was that good? What was anything in particular that they brought up that was a differentiating factor? Because I would love to hear that and put that into the ad copy, to the landing page, put that high up on the landing page. The facilities that are successful, they do that. That's the kind of collaboration you want to seek to achieve.
Yeah. There's a huge opportunity for feedback loops between these teams.
Yeah.
One's going to make the other one better. The insights that an admissions team can get from folks calling in can help the marketing team. Marketing tries to come up with some really fancy, clever copy, and it falls flat, and no one can actually say it out loud because it's clearly something that's only written. And you're like, whoa, like you said, what are people telling the admissions team? And then just take that almost verbatim and put it on your website.
Totally. I'll give you a very good example. We had a campaign we're running that have 80-something beds, and we have at least 5 to 6 admits consistently, because we don't listen to all the calls, but systematically when we meet, we take spot checks, I call it. So we listen to every 10 calls that are more than 5 minutes, just to have a feedback look in process before we have a status call with clients. So we start detecting the patterns, but we also start noticing. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot that ask, am I allowed to use my phone while I'm there? It's a small little thing. So we put into the landing page, we are technology friendly. You can bring your cell phone because not everybody allows for that. And for some people, that's very important. Or we pet friendly was another thing. We even had where there was a lot of folks calling in to say if they accepted couples. So, hey, let's break it out and create a couples only campaign strategy. That kind of feedback, unless you're listening to the questions when they're calling in, if you say, no, this is rejected because we didn't have the right policy or they were looking for something else, this communication stop there. But those little golden nuggets only comes when there's a lead back. It's like, thank you, that's interesting. Why don't we have a separate campaigns for mobile, tech friendly, for couples only, for pet friendly facility? And then people, when they have that as a requirement on the list, then they will get converted at a higher rate. That's just a little example of feedback. Obviously, there's much more to that, but that's like where you can get some quick wins.
Yeah, that's super concrete and really actionable. It's not something that's very abstract. I mean, in the least, if your admissions team is getting peppered with questions, have them write those questions down, and those can become, again, at the very least, part of an FAQ section on one of your services pages, right?
Yes.
These are quick wins.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you have any other kind of quick wins or low-hanging fruit?
Yeah. I mean, so we talked a lot about the demand gen and lead gen, right? At Elevate, we basically have 3 departments. Right now, I'm sitting at our Elevate Media offices, but we also have Elevate Tech and we have Elevate Sales. It all starts typically with Elevate Media, making sure that you're capturing the demand, we're generating demand for facilities. So that's typically where we start. But very often, it goes into Elevate Tech, and that's basically the tracking, the reporting, the attribution, the CRM, the marketing automation to make sure that these highly expensive leads don't fall through the cracks and that they are nurtured throughout their journey in a non-intrusive, value-adding way so that you bring down the overall CPA. Now, many systems don't have that. They buy a CRM and they hire an Indian guy to install it. But you have to understand our industry and understand the admissions process, the flow, and how it's connected with Kipu and your instant verification software. If you do that the right way, you have data that you can leverage from a marketing standpoint. And then the third component is what I call Elevate Sales. And that's basically where we work with facilities on business development, help them expand their strategic partnerships with non-reciprocal partners, build a business newsletter, start connecting on LinkedIn, hitting them up, booking meetings, and allowing the reps to build relationships, and we take care of everything else behind the scenes. In addition to that, we do what's called admissions enablement. And admissions enablement, I would say, going in, listening to your reps, understanding what are the common obstacles? What are the common rebuttals? Who's the most common competitors that you're up against? What is the biggest barrier for admission? Start documenting that and create what I call an admissions playbook. Basically a playbook that you hand off to a new rep when they come in and say, if you follow this, there's a strong probability you will be successful. I always like to come in and then I listen to, say, 50, 100 calls. I ask them to send me a collection of calls where they're admitted for different kind of scenarios. I tell them to send me the calls that was like they felt they did a great job, but they didn't get admitted. And then I would kind of listen through all those calls. And then I go in and say, okay, who's the top performer on the admissions team? And what are they doing? Try to see, like, are they very good at, built-in report? Do they have a very compassionate questioning process? Is it the follow-up game? What is it that makes them good? And then start to basically document those different things and try to say, okay, how can we organize it in a more effective way? Because we're all creatures of habit, but at the same time, if you're in sales or in business development, there's a certain way you can say things, but after a while you feel like, shit, I sound really stupid. I've been saying this 1,000 times. I'm going to try to change it up. But guess what? When you find something that's really effective and the best way to explain a scenario for a prospective patient, you got to make sure that they get the information quick and as effective as possible and that it resonates with them. So creating these, not scripts, but call guidelines, rebuttal directories, suggested call flows, training, support feedback mechanism, and then making sure that they understand a follow-up process that effective, non-intrusive with adding value, that goes a long way. Because if you can convert 20% of those leads into VOBs versus 10%, I'm telling you, the marketing return on investment, that calculation, it looks entirely different. So that's one component, but that typically can't be done without having the right CRM and tracking attribution. So it's kind of like a 360 requirement, when we start working with folks, I know I can't just say, hey, welcome to Elevate. I need you to invest $100,000 in CRM and technology and a training team and all that. I'm like, okay, let's take a crawl, walk, run approach. Let me get the phone ringing. Let me get you some good admins. Let you see some growth. When you're ready, we should probably talk about how we can further get a better return on that investment, not by putting more money into ads, but simply by making your process more effective.
Yeah, I like that. And also, I think you had mentioned a tactic earlier in the call of, if you are doing PPC and you're spending $100K, maybe there is a way to do it more efficiently, see the same results with $80K instead of $100K. So now you have $20K to put toward, that more holistic marketing mix on Maslow's hierarchy of admissions.
Yes.
And then
Amen.
those programs start to work and you start seeing returns, and now you have a little bit more money to throw to the other tiers of the admissions pyramid.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Well, we're coming up on time. Any other kind of parting words? Any other things that you feel folks really should know until they have another chance to talk to you?
I think we covered a lot of ground today, Andrew. I'll say feel free to reach out to me. I am very passionate about people. Like, I had these big companies. I've had a couple of exits. Why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. But for me, I'm loving it because we are helping people struggling. And whether or not we can work together, I love to chat and expand my network. So you can reach out via elevate.io. You can go to my personal website, garygarth.com, or I'm on social media. If you want a copy of my book, if you want a copy of the planner, I'm more than happy to send out a copy. Again, I'm not looking to make money. I made a lot of money with my old company. I'm just looking to help people and for them to improve themselves. And by improving themselves, they can improve their facilities. And we all win at the end of the day, I feel. So, yeah, hope to connect with some folks.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a illuminating conversation with you, Gary. Thanks so much for stopping by the show. I think we'll be seeing you in Madison, Wisconsin, recovery.com headquarters for our summit this summer.
Yeah. I'll be there with bells and whistles on. Can't wait.
Yeah. Wonderful, man. All right. Well, take care. Keep talking.
That's awesome. Thanks again, Andrew. Talk soon.
That's today's episode. Thanks for listening to Recovery Reach. We'll see you again next week. And remember, the more people you reach, the more you can help.